Okay. So in terms of TL duties, we are talking about team productivity, and we have said that it starts with defining the goals, then assigning tasks to the team, and then the third one is tracking progress, also known as project management. And, personally, I remember in college they tried to teach me all these project management methodologies like Scrum, Agile, Waterfall, Kanban, and so on, right? Like there's so many of these. I'm probably sure you know of some that I haven't even ever heard of. And super complicated. I don't even know what all of this about is. What I want you to do is, for the sake of this course, forget about all of that. I seriously have no idea what any of these mean. And simply, there's three things that any methodology should be able to do. First of them is, are things getting delayed? You want early signal on when project is off track. And simply my approach to this has always been, what I've learned from my own TLs is to have solid milestones that are closely tied to consumer journeys, and have these milestones granular enough to, be able to, like they should be at the right granularity. Like you don't want them to be at a weekly level either. You want at least, if it's a year-long project, milestones are probably like once every month, 2 months, something like that, right? So that's your like higher level signal of when things are getting delayed. But there's obviously like more granular milestones that you want to set up with individual engineers and maybe smaller groups, right? And you can rely on individuals to be able to uplift this to you when they think things are off track. So one quote that I use is, the more you plan, the more you bleed in training, the more you sweat in training, the less you bleed in the war or the battle. And the analogous version of that for software engineering is that you plan well. You define milestones, you break down tasks, and if you're hitting milestones, all good. The other thing you want is, you want engineers to not be blocked on something and sitting idle. So my approach to that was, as it always has been, to have multiple tasks, multiple non-dependent tasks for every engineer, like at least 2 to 3, so that if they're blocked on one, they can invest their productive hours into doing the other one. And they can come to me or their TL that I am TLing to figure out how to unblock them on that certain task. And unblocking is the TL's job, certainly. Sometimes it's like, oh, hey, this other team's not reviewing our code, or they're not approving our changes. Or sometimes it's, we need product to weigh in on this certain problem. Sometimes it's just that, oh, hey, we made some assumptions earlier in the process which are not valid anymore. So we need an alternate solution. And that would require building alignment and all that, right? So as a TL, your job is to unblock everybody, but you need a signal on that. The third one is accountability. Basically, you want engineers to be held accountable. You want to make sure that they are, the third one is accountability. You want engineers to be able to answer what they have been up to in a certain time frame. And that's what stand-ups are more like for, but daily stand-ups, they're pretty aggressive. Depends on your team's or, like your company's culture. But accountability is important because most engineers, sometimes some engineers might not be self-driven. And having that, some engineers are driven by visibility. So this is also a way of, giving them visibility amongst the wider team, so that they can see that this whole group is relying on them to do something. And obviously no one loves to let their teammates down, right? So you can have stand-ups, you can have offline updates, whatever works best for you. But while we are at this discussion of stand-ups, I do want to touch upon meetings a little bit. Some CLs operate like this, where they see a free spot on calendar and they're just like, yeah, let's have some more meetings. We're not having enough meetings, said no one ever. So how to avoid the meeting plague? How, because as a TL, you don't want to be spending your whole day in meetings because there's no time left to do code reviews. There's no time left to actually do some deep work. And this becomes especially a problem for junior and mid-level engineers, where they're spending a lot of time in meetings instead of being productive, like on actually delivering their tasks. And this often happens when there is no structure defined. So what you want is, first, let's clean up the calendars. And one thing you can do is just scrub the calendars, be like, what is this meeting? Why do we need this? Recurring meetings are the biggest time sinks. And because people just set them up and never delete them, human brain is just made to solve things in an additive way. It's psychologically proved that humans prefer additive solutions rather than subtractive. So think about deleting meetings that are not needed anymore. And then the other part of that is, who needs to be in that meeting? And so if you invite more people, they'll show up, right? Like, people don't have a clear idea of whether they need to be in a meeting or not. So do consider that. I remember that when we were having a big project with around 50 engineers or so, we clearly laid out the meeting structure across the whole program. We said these are the only recurring meetings that we'll have, and every meeting had a clear purpose. So with that, I think we were able to monitor the time sinks of the team as a whole, and also ensure that there's no roadblocks during the execution. So while we are talking about project management, it would be amiss to not talk about program managers. Certain projects have program managers, certain do not. It certainly depends on your organization's current bandwidth and staffing, but PGMs are a great resource, in my opinion. But most engineers have no idea what PGMs do. So I personally may also have a vague idea only, but the way I use them to my most advantage as a TL is I let them handle the leadership updates, sending weekly newsletters on the progress, or if there's work that we need to do with other teams, other product areas, or other functions, I certainly involve them, because if there are a lot of moving pieces, they can get a handle on it. They can set up the meetings, they can drive conversations, they can build alignment even, right? The third way in which I use program managers is for project management tooling. Google has its own proprietary stuff, and sometimes I'm not the best person to use it. So they certainly help me learn how to use some of these tools, how to automate some of these workflows, and they even set up templates that I could just copy paste for my other projects. So that's on project management.